Anna, thank you for diving into the material from Cleveland. There are lots of academics that are working with these maps. And I even map people that are doing the mapping. And I think you, Elliot, particularly both of you, took a step forward, which is absolutely key to start doing our own mapping. But I will say that I have not been able to contribute to mapping the mapping. And yet I will try to bring the universities into play if that's helpful. Because there are also university initiatives like in Cleveland, the Great Lakes Energy Institute and NOACA. NOACA is the Northeastern Ohio Area Regioning Council, and they have cognitive mapping for, depending on who's mapping it, 15 to 19 counties up here. The problem with all those folks and the problems with the universities is they tend to define things by political boundaries, not by watersheds. So as Kim said, we're trying to get the bioregional concept into the thinking of some of these organizations like NOACA and the Western Reserve Land Conservancy. So yeah, and I guess I'll end with this, and I apologize for going on, Victoria and everybody. To me, what Anna said about helping the Buffalo folks do their work is really key, because you can spend an enormous amount of time doing mapping, but if we don't at the end of the day have a sense of where the maps are going to land, so to speak, in terms of having an impact, I think keeping that in the back of our minds or the foreground of our minds as we do this work is really important in my view. Thank you.
Also, I'll just interject real quickly that I think, you know, in the long run that it would benefit your project to get some Native American people involved, because they know in terms of mapping and bioregions, they'll know it as well or better than anybody in terms of moving that map into something that you can identify as a singular bioregion. Back in the 80s and early 90s, I started a project. Well, I was director of a project to protect Native American sacred sites. And so the sacred sites went into our mapping or our concept of our bioregion as a very important part of that. And maybe the most important part, I don't know, but we did a lot of working with the Cherokee elders and visiting places and doing a lot of cataloging of information. And then we had an outreach program where we got in touch with the media and let them know what we were doing. And so there was a real expensive project in the end. So that might be something you might want to think about. I mean, in terms of including it, so it's not just a lot of water information or whatever you're doing currently, that would give it some and attract people to what you're doing, or a different type of person maybe.
That's really great, Thomas. And Elliot can talk to all the things we've talked about that these maps could include. And happy to share all of that in Cascadia. The Department of Bioregion in Cascadia. If you don't know them, they're very advanced. We absolutely want to be mapping culture and all of that. So that's absolutely, the indigenous view for every place, and sacred sites, of course. And why I had my hand up was that Elliot, after you finished your map, and while I was looking at it, I was just really blown away by, how somebody like you who's so technical starts with a handwritten map. It didn't occur to me that that's the way to feel into these things, and to let your creativity go, rather than having to do it technically work with technology. So I really appreciate both of you. And I didn't realize the two of you had worked on this together. But Anna, all the things that you've done, and Elliot, it's groundbreaking for ER, for Earth for Generators, because nobody has gotten to this level yet. And it's going to be valuable for everybody. And people like Thomas are just going to add more and more. But I just want to appreciate both of you for what you've done and what you're doing. It's just awesome.
Hey, Anna, can I just add to what Victoria said?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love the Sacred Places project. I actually work with some neo-pagans that are mapping worldwide religions and spiritual traditions that are disappearing. So the notion that, and I think in your poetry, this notion of re-indigenization without appropriation, the fact that we all have to get ourselves connected to where we live. So that's, on the other hand, I think we should, map casinos. I mean, quite frankly, sacred places and places where the dead are buried and desecrated is the spiritual side. The issue of who's indigenous, because you get a percentage of royalties for casinos, is the other side of this terrible influence that Western culture has had on indigenous people. So, but I'm just echoing what Victoria said. This issue of, it's the culture really we have to work on. The planet and the watersheds are there. It's a question of how do we think about them? How do we think about them in terms of our connections to nature, which we really need the guidance of indigenous folks around. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. And Kim, do you have a response, or you want to go next?
Yeah, no, I would just add to it, along the lines of what is happening today, the Sherry Mitchell's book, Sacred Instructions, which, she's I think she's an environmental attorney. I'm not sure, but Thomas wrote a brief review of that book. And I don't know if I'd mentioned the book before, but she came to Turtle Island Institute and we did a little book study with her and with Mulaney Goodchild. And it's an incredible book. And do you want to mention a little bit about it, Thomas? I think it's fresher in your head in terms of, why it's important.
Well, it is incredible, and she's incredible, and she's been knighted, so to speak, by the elders, not only of her indigenous community up in Maine, but of tribes across the country, to become a spokesperson for the idea of re-inhabitation and reculturalization and environmental consciousness and spiritual consciousness. So the book is a compendium of many different kinds of thinking. I mean, there's philosophy, there's psychology, there's environmental science, there's the spiritual indigenous history of her people, and it all comes together and to give us kind of a more comprehensive picture of what we need to do and where we went wrong and where we need to go right, and what we need to do to put things back into balance. So I think it's one of the most important books I've read recently, and I'm really trying to get the word out there to as much as I can to let people know about it. So I think the deal is you have to read it for yourself, but I think once you start it, you won't be able to put it down, because every sentence is one thing after another. I mark my books because I review them, so I mark pages and lines and things, and this book is just full of marks, and everything she says practically is quotable. So yeah, I highly recommend the book. Yeah.
And it's a way of living, it's a way of living in connection, in that wholeness with life, humans and our more than human world, all the plants. And she comes right out at the beginning and says, use your senses, like use all of your senses, because it is in this reconnection is that, is kind of the way forward. I know I sound like a broken record, but to our true nature of reality, it gives hope for that kind of standing. And she's an attorney, so it's also a legal and just life thing.
And one of the things I just want to add to what I said before about the Sacred Sites Project is we did a lot of visiting of these places. The places that the Cherokee elders would allow us to know about. There are some they wouldn't, of course, but we did visit a lot of these places that we were collecting information on and everything. And I became attuned to the energies of these places. Something happened in my body that allowed me to become more sensitive, and I would go into these places and I could feel the different levels of vibration or energy in these places. And so I understood why they were chosen for the ceremony or the reasons that they were used for whatever they were used for, because of the levels of and the kinds of energy in these places. There were places that I went into that I had to leave. It was so powerful. And then there were places that were very negative energy because they had been shut down by the elders for whatever reason. And but then there were places that were very, very interesting and positive that I could, visit and enjoy and participate in. But the whole thing of being in the natural world and experiencing the energy of these places is critical. Because otherwise, the idea of a sacred place is just this concept, this mental concept. And it was much more than a mental concept. It's a physical reality to the indigenous peoples. And they had reasons why they chose these places for what they were using them for. So anyway, that's a little addendum to what I was saying before.
And the way of life that like everything is sacred, right? Someone pulled you aside in that writing and just was a reminder that that's how we live. Every place is sacred.
Friend of mine, another university professor, he defined knowledge, sorry, what did he say? He defined wisdom as knowledge in action. And as a practitioner and not a university professor or a writer, anyways, won't put too many distinctions out there. I'm wondering what the next actions are in terms of bioregional mapping. Or if we're just going to continue this philosophical thread.
Well, I was thinking, so I like the idea, Thomas, that you had about inviting Indigenous people into the conversation. And actually there is an event that Kim tagged me in that's actually happening maybe about a 5-minute walk from my house. The Haudenosaunee in this area, specifically the Seneca tribe, hosts a lot of socials. So they're they offer dinner and they have dancing and some sort of presentation. And I've been to a couple of them. They're very nice and very welcoming. And they're actually teaming up with the Nature Conservancy and a couple of other groups. And they're going to be having kind of a presentation on the state of conservation in New York, and that is happening on Wednesday. So I was planning on going. I don't personally have any connections that are super strong within this community, but I would love to have that conversation. As Elliot mentioned, this is kind of a pilot project that we're doing. So we're just starting our mapping here. It's certainly in a lot of ways just we're just trying to get something mapped. So I wouldn't want anything to necessarily hold us up, but certainly I think that it's a great idea to, as we develop more resources, to start bringing more people in as much as possible. So I think that that would be one thing that I would really like to do.
What time on Wednesday?
So it is from 5 to probably about 8 o'clock on Wednesday. It is, I'm going to see if I can find. And actually, funnily enough, the Tonawanda Band of Seneca, they are very, that's the group that's closest to the Niagara River on the New York side. They have a very strong, well, they actually are one of the Haudenosaunee tribes that are most active within the Haudenosaunee Environmental Task Force. They have actually paid staff that work on environmental issues in their on their reservation and within their community. So I think that that's another benefit is Niagara River. That's their home, and in comparison to the larger New York State, they are certainly one of the most active groups. So I think that that's another opportunity that we could look into as we continue down this path of gathering information, and how can we bring in different perspectives to this would be wonderful. And then as soon as I find that, we could. Peter, you're muted.
So we are actively trying to engage, not actively enough, Indigenous people here. There's a nurse that I work with at one of our hospitals who's trying to develop a clinic for Indigenous people and is participating in Sundance ceremonies regionally. But I want to be a bit divergent because you asked what's the next step. So I do want to, Elliot mentioned that he may have seen something about my tree doctor. So I'm at the International Digital Storytelling Festival in Washington in a couple of weeks, and talking about the importance of sense of place and ancestorhood. I think ancestorhood is another concept that comes to us from Indigenous people that we've forgotten in modernity. And that this is not local, but it is about telling stories in different forests around the world. And at some level, all the forests of the world are part of the Wood Wide Web, are connected. So I tend to use the word locality. The idea that we have to think of all our bioregions locally, but also connect it to a bigger story, which in the case of that work involves something that Elliot probably resonates with, we all do, which is the importance of forests wherever you find them around the world. And the importance of the work that the Indigenous people are doing to protect those forests, whether it's in our region or other regions.
Yeah, I think that would be a great inclusion. I think kind of going back to what Elliot was saying, though, was I think that this would be important, that not that we don't want to invite other groups in, we certainly want to, but we are still on a very in a very early stage, and I think it would be great if we started to really define exactly to get a better sense of how we're moving forward. Yeah, and sorry, Victoria, I'm having a hard time finding exactly where it was. I can tell you where it is. It's at Harriman Hall and at UB. But I think it's somewhere, it's LinkedIn was where the post was first posted. I can always send you an email afterwards too, if I can't find it before the end of the meeting. But I think, so sorry, continuing on with my train of thoughts. I think it would be really great if we within this group also started to maybe determine how we meet, like what next steps can we take between this meeting and next meeting. I think that that would be really helpful to just start speaking in more concrete terms, in terms of how, like, what are we adding to the spreadsheets that we have, or what are people going to be looking into? I know that a lot of people are super busy, so again, keeping in mind the capacities that you have to contribute, it would be really interesting to hear what everybody is thinking. Like, what are some things that you might be able to add to this project?
I don't really know, because I know the project is, for the Niagara River, right? The Niagara River Basin. But the stuff that you decide to collect, I thought that that's what we would do in our other, like, we're on the southern edge of the Great Lake Erie, so expanding out from Cleveland, like the stuff that's being collected for Niagara, maybe we could do the same here. That's the only idea that I have, but I'm happy to help if you want to assign me something.
I mean, I think that that would be really helpful, because ultimately, like, we're looking at the Niagara River right now, but as we build up, we certainly want to include all of the Great Lakes, and we could work on a lot of the shoreline along the, Buffalo down to Cleveland. It's all relatively close. So if you feel that you're able to add to that, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I will think about how that might be possible.
Yeah, sure.
By the way, Kimberly, I clicked on the link at the bottom and it seemed to be like about job recruiting. So I definitely would love to contact Curtis, and so, we can go back and forth and see how that's possible. I don't know if Jonathan would come with me, but I know I can go. Is anybody else planning to go to the Seneca Social on Wednesday evening? Okay. I don't know how far you're away, Kimberly. I have no idea.
No, I just saw this. This is a kind of a newish friend of mine, and I just saw that happened. He's going there, and it happened to be right here in our bioregion. So I just tagged whoever I contacts was just to share that. And in here, it's just a screenshot, so
And
it probably isn't linked to anything.
Anna put it in here, so I have it. Thank you, Anna.
Yeah, no problem. I can see you there. I have to, I probably won't be getting there in time for the dinner, but I was hoping to get there around 6:30 to see because that's when the dancing will start. And typically they do their presentation sometime between the dinner and the dancing.
Oh, great.
Elliot, I saw that you unmuted. Did you have something you wanted to add?
It's that the Niagara River is just a way of developing a process that makes sense for mapping bioregions, watersheds, ecoregions, whatever we want to call them, in a bigger way, so that we have a living example. Just like we can, I was able to find this during our conversation today, the Katua Bioregional Journal, and understand a bit about the process that took place 40 years ago and how that unfolded. And yeah, this I think ties in with that concept of locality that Peter was talking about. We don't need to be from an area to participate in it. Just like at one point we probably could have traveled from Scotland across Doggerland into the Netherlands and traded, or, I don't exactly know how to explain this. It's much richer in my mind. But, at one point, there was people that were taking care of oysters all across the world. And they might not have been able to speak the same language, but they had the same process of taking care of oysters. If you get what I'm saying. So yeah, I guess to sum it up, what I can do is I'll kind of keep working on this as a kind of exercise for myself, and then I'll think about what specific GIS information we need and how to structure that so that we can produce some comprehensive maps on, for example, where the point sources of pollution are that don't really exist.
Great, great, great. I'm not gonna volunteer for something. But if there's somebody thinks that I can do, feel free to ask.
Yeah. Well, and I think even just bringing ideas to you guys and bouncing off ideas in this meeting will be helpful as we move further along. Because there's certainly one of the first things that we were going to do was just trying to figure out sources of the pollution, like Elliot was saying, and identifying exactly what we want to be either looking for that's publicly available or reaching out to other contacts to ask for. So for example, what could we ask some of the people who own sections of the ArcGIS from Case Western University, or ask the Buffalo Niagara Waterkeepers if they have any contacts who might have certain sets of data or of maps that might not be publicly available. So I think just thinking about what makes an area swimmable and accessible, and what comes along with that. So what are the indicator species that are in these areas? There's a lot of insects that are very important. There's a lot of amphibians and reptiles that are very important. So those are all things that could be added to this map. And even if you have like, oh, hey, it would be really cool if we also took a look at this, that might be helpful. Maybe something that would be easy for you guys to contribute to this process.
I'm reminded, but now that you say that, Anna, I'm reminded of someone that at that complexity weekend suggested migratory maps of the animals, like where they would come in or leave in a certain area. We were talking about the whole Great Lakes bioregion, but it would be cool to map that along the Niagara. And I think Niagara River is a great choice. I mean, the reason that the group is there for the next 3 days is not because of Buffalo, it's because Niagara Falls are there. That's why they chose this place to meet.
Well, and that's a great point, Kim. We're actually it's a location of great importance for migratory birds, because not only do we get Arctic birds that are coming down south this way for during their winter and going back up north, but we also have a lot of birds that are flying south for our winter and coming back up during the summertime. And the Niagara Escarpment is actually a critical location for a lot of birds coming and traveling in between the two countries. So I think that we definitely have a lot of things that we could work with. And I also I'm on the board of a group called Birds on the Niagara. Personally, I'm not a birder, but I have friends that were part of part of this organization that's getting started. So I think like that would be a great group to also, I'll ask around to see if anybody has any information in regards to migratory birds.
And I think that helps develop that sense of bioregional sensibility, right? Because people that wouldn't even consider, what does it matter what a migratory pattern is? But if the birds aren't coming anymore, the butterflies aren't coming anymore, why is that? And what can we do to make it, I don't know, back to what it was. I don't know if that's the right phrasing. And then just one other thing that's come up, I've read, or Thomas, you've written before about, or you coined the moniker New Native, which I think goes to speak to what Elliot was mentioning, that, you know, we can be in places and not be like a lineage indigenous there, but we can go and like do our best. You know, I guess now I'm realizing your whole press was named New Native, maybe because of that, if you wanted to say a word on that, because I think we all struggle with that a bit. You know, we all say we need more indigenous people here, and then someone will say you got to be careful how you even speak about, you know, which is it's all true. It's all true, but you've already processed this. And if you could just share a word or two about that, I think it would be helpful to us.
Well, what we were doing in California back in the 70s was saying that we needed to become new natives, meaning indigenous to the place, not the culture, but to the place, and to learn from the older cultures, the indigenous cultures, about how to do that, and to embody the behavior that it's going to take to be sustainable and reverent towards all species and interconnected and all those good things that we all know about now. But to become that, and we're in a new paradigm now in terms of the age that we're in, the Holocene, and so we're starting over. And the spiritual teachers that I listen to are all saying that this is a new chapter in human history in terms of the expansion of consciousness and going forward, what life's going to look like. And so, in that sense, we're just children starting out, but we're newly indigenous children to this new age that we're living in. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, and where I was coming from with the idea of new native. I don't mean becoming a wannabe Indian. I mean being a harmonious element in this interconnected planet of ours, and doing it consciously and in the right way.
Thank you.
What I was going to just say, I do have something I wanted to ask Elliot, but I wanted to follow up and get anybody's, if I do go, or if Jonathan and I do go on Wednesday, I would love to know how we behave, what to do, what not to do, that, you know, that I might have learned after one or two of these kinds of things. So if there's any way that, and if you want to do that in a personal call, however, I would really love to hear thoughts.
Yeah, I just real quick, I can say that everybody's very open. There will likely be some vendors there too, and some tables with some additional information. So when I've gone with a friend, we kind of just engaged with a lot of the vendors and with some of the tables, and learned what's going on in the community that way. And we've just kind of sat and watched everybody dance. I have been told that you are more than welcome to get up and dance because everybody, it's very much like a whole community process. It's not just one or two dancers. Everybody gets up and joins in. I have not felt comfortable yet, but I think that it's a really great experience. I wouldn't necessarily be intimidated at all. And I think that it would be wonderful to see you there. So.
Great. And then the question I had thank you. So there isn't any obvious things. One of the things that I remember hearing is Native Americans do not want to be called indigenous. They want to be called their name, what tribe they're from. Is that accurate? Like grouping everybody together. That's,
Care if somebody calls you European?
what's that?
Do you care if somebody calls you European?
Uh,
Or an
no.
Anglo-American?
No, I just heard
And
that.
do you have friends or people that you know who might not like to be generalized in that way?
Probably. Yeah.
Same. It's the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
People.
These are all Seneca that are going to be at this, or are they bringing other people from other tribes?
So the Seneca reservation is the closest reservation. So in terms of like, I haven't really had the opportunity, or have I been in a situation where I have to name somebody's tribe when I'm speaking to them. So I think that for the most part, though, I would assume that the speakers have always been referencing the Seneca reservations and the Seneca community
Right.
when I've been there.
And then Elliot, you had said something before that about taking care of oysters and that everyone uses the same process around the world. Can you say more about the implication of what that means? Given that those peoples did not see each other, did not learn from each other necessarily, or maybe they did.
Yeah, I'm definitely generalizing when I'm saying that everybody that processed oysters had similar processes and paradigms of sustainability, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But one thing that I might have mentioned in this group before, might not have, is the concept of clans, Nadodima in Anishinaabe. And my one professor, he is Deer Clan. And this is just a small part of a much more detailed and nuanced system that I do not fully understand or have all of the answers on. But what he said in terms of being Deer Clan is that he does not eat any hooved animal, but is responsible for making sure that all of the plants and habitats that they need are present on the landscape so that other people can hunt / be in this sacred reciprocal relationship with deer and moose and elk.
And when you say others, other species, is that what you mean?
Other clans. So for example, people from the turtle clan or from the eel clan or from the crane clan might harvest the meat of those hooved animals. But and like I said, this is much more nuanced and detailed. And there's fish weirs and oyster caches all across the world, in Australia, in Europe, in Turtle Island. And so-called primitive peoples, how it's often taught in our in probably the school system that most of us grew up in, they traveled vast distances and had very intricate systems of transcontinental diplomacy and relationships.
Thank you. Wow. Okay.
So I guess that's to my point of, and I think what you were saying as well, it's like, what Kim, both you and Anna were talking about, it's like, I'm not from the Niagara region, but there's birds that visit where I am, that visit the Niagara region. And I'm not from the Niagara region, but there's waters around me that are not swimmable. So by contributing to this kind of a process, which is maybe going to be turned into a specific booklet binder resource for the Buffalo Niagara water keepers and maybe some people on the Canadian side. I'm learning about my own bioregion, and I'm learning about that web of relationships, and I'm learning about the process of everything.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you.
I was gonna volunteer to look for some birds, but Anna's on the bird board. So
Like I said, I don't know a lot about birds. It's kind of odd that I'm on the board, but so I would absolutely love if you or like I said, any indicator species. The snapping turtles are so important around here. And then I think that indicator species are probably the best place to start because they're the ones that disappear the first. They're the first ones to disappear if there is anything wrong in the area, if there's pollution or degradation. So a strong base of indicator species means that it's more than likely a healthy ecosystem.
Are you also saying it's a keystone? Or you're just saying it's a, what did you call it?
Indicator species. So the terms aren't synonymous, but I'm sure that there's a lot of overlap. Indicator just means that they are the most susceptible to pollution. So it tends to be insects or amphibians because they have very porous skin and any toxins will kill them off pretty, yes, canary in the coal mine. So as soon as they start dying off, you know there's a problem.
And yeah, Kim, if you want to research birds, like research is so broad here, right? Like we need storytelling that maybe somebody can identify that bird and say, oh, I can hear it singing here, but they can't necessarily tell other components of that story. So I think it's all valuable.
I will open my mind and you can also just tell me what you want to, but I will, of course, I will pitch in.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention, I think that there's so much too that is potentially relevant that we could use. I even there was a in one of the folders that I added, I actually at Niagara University, there was an artist that drew it's an entire room that they dedicated to his artwork, and he painted things like sturgeon and different parts of the waterway, and along the entire room there was the map of the Niagara River. And it was all like it, I mean, I think that there was a lot of accuracy to it in some ways, but it was very much like dependent on art. It's a lot of his point of view sitting along the Niagara River and what he saw, and then he painted or sketched it. So I think like any of those, anything that would help to tell the story of this place would be helpful too. We're just framing it in the way of, you know, making the waters healthy. So I think just anything that you think might be interesting would be helpful to include.
I do know that, you know, some people, you know, a friend talked about how when she would go to like the tea ceremony, remember that tea, that community complexity. And this one day, Melanie was just saying that, just started talking about water and said it used to be that I would be able to go down to the stream when I was a kid and be able to get water and bring it back. And that's what, you know, say we would use that for our tea ceremony. It's like, we can't do that anymore. So what's happened? And then she, you know, it was like a series of things that day that really was just surfacing on the precarious state of our water. So, I mean, I think that, I don't know, has something to do with what we're doing here. So I'm just offering that. not to put on the map, but it's good that we're working with water, I guess.
This Alberto Ray exhibition is very, very impressive.
Right? Yeah.
Mhm.
I wasn't sure what I mean, I just took, pictures from my cell phone, so it'd be cool if we could somehow embed it. If I figured that if we had figured out a way of embedding it into the map, then I would reach out to him and say like, hey, do you want to be part of our map? Because he's a teacher at Fredonia, so he's only a little ways south of here. But yeah, very cool.
What are you talking about? An exhibit?
Yes, I took pictures of the exhibit. I'll just put it's in the folder. Oh, thank you, Elliot. So yeah, this is just the entire room was the river. And then various pictures that he painted that was related to different things that you can see along the river, like, yeah, the Power Authority, the Tuscarora Reservation. Oh, and that's right. It wasn't the Tonawanda Band of Seneca. It's the Tuscarora Reservation that has the active office as part of the Haudenosaunee Environmental Task Force. So. But yeah, so I took a picture of the room and then each of the things as well as some of his writings. So it's just a free exhibit. So if anybody's interested. And we are coming to the end of our time too, so I would love if we could do a checkout on some of the whatever. So Thomas, and I skipped over this, so I apologize. Typically we do a check-in before I start recording, and just however you're showing up, anything that's most pertinent to you and how you're showing up, and then we do a checkout just to kind of give everybody the opportunity to share whatever's going on with them and what you're taking away from the meeting. So I just want to say that I've been having like a really fun time investigating all these things. It is very near and dear to my heart because it's so close to me, but it's also amazes me how much is out there about this, that just if you do a little bit of uncovering, you can learn so much about a specific place and how it all interconnects. So looking forward to continuing to learn. And I'll pass it along to Kim.
I'm checking out. I really love all the components of your map, Elliot. I like the storytelling. I like everything that you're doing there, and I'm really grateful for that. And I'm grateful for Thomas's sharing and coming here today. I like that, and just grateful for everyone. And I'll pass to Jonathan.
Well, yes, a very rich conversation, and I'm very pleased to have been part of it. Pass to Victoria.
Just another mind-bending conversation, just amazing. And specifically just seeing the hand-drawn map and the Excel spreadsheet and the things that are the problem, the issues, all that just gives me so much more confidence to say how we start something, in this area. So thank you. And if there's a way that you guys, Elliot and Anna, would say, don't do this first, do that instead, or do that, feel free to share your learnings about what's the most helpful process, because we will be doing that in our area. And before I pass it on, I just wanted to know, I had said to somebody that was interested in the health of the Seneca people And it wasn't the two of you, right? It wasn't you, Kimberly, and it wasn't you, Anna, that were interested in my contacting Common Ground. So obviously not. I think I remember it was somebody I didn't know well, and I don't know if I'll find them. Okay, so Thomas.
Well, I just wanted to thank you all for allowing me to sit in and listen to what you're doing. I'm very impressed, and you know, it's a lot of detail. I mean, especially for me being way down here in the south. So I don't know that area very well, but I'm learning, and that's the whole point, I think, is our process of learning and becoming more knowledgeable and being able to access these other bioregions and to know who and what is there. So I thank you for allowing me to sit in, and Jonathan, if you want to send me what you've written, I'll be happy to look at it and we can talk further. Good luck with what all you're doing, and I'll pop in from time to time maybe, and maybe I can help in some little way. I don't know what that would be, but I'm very interested in that part of the world because I don't know a lot about it. So thank you very much.
And you get to pass it on to Elliot, I guess.
All right, to Elliot. Yeah, Elliot, thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, from my perspective, you've already contributed a great deal. Yeah, learned a lot from you, and I'm looking forward to diving a little bit deeper into some of the works that you've contributed to. Yes, I often have this feeling when I'm walking in the forest and thinking, you know, about trees and time and all of that. It's a little bit rare that it happens in a Zoom meeting, but I kind of feel that same way, where it's bouncing between these tiny, tiny details and then also vast stretches of time and idea and whatnot. So thank you. And Kim, you've gone? Has everybody gone? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Before you close out, Anna, what I would love, and I would love it to be a practice in ER, when somebody does like what you, Anna, and Elliot have done for the group, I would love to know if there's a way that we can acknowledge you, because everyone's different, you know, that there are things that you want to be acknowledged for that we may not even have known, and your sharing it might add something. But sometimes you don't get acknowledged for what you really want to get acknowledged for. So I just wanted to open that up for Elliot and Anna.
I'd have to think about that.
I am very intrinsically motivated. So definitely feel the appreciation from all of you. And yeah, I don't need anything else.
Yeah, I think that luckily this is a very fun activity that yeah, but just you saying that, Victoria, is very much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, and things that didn't come up that you thought, you know, they really need to see this, because I saw it in depth, and it's just like a distinction that I got that hasn't been discussed yet. So
yeah, thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. We will see you next week for our general meeting. And Thomas, you are more than welcome to join whenever you're available, any of those meetings. You're always welcome. Thank you. Great. Bye, everyone.
bye-bye.